I welcome to this tutorial series where we are going to be looking at CSS. And when we talk about CSS, CSS is just the abbreviation for cascading style sheets, and it is majorly used to style our HTML page. Just think of it as, okay, the HTML is like the skeleton of your web application or website, and for you to add flesh to it, or for you to beautify it, then you are going to need CSS to beautify. So HTML is used to build the structure, while CSS is used to decorate and beautify it. And for this course, or for this series, you need to have some basic knowledge of HTML, because we want to style HTML, and if you don't know HTML, then there's no point learning how to style what you don't know. So the basic knowledge of HTML is going to be prerequisite for this series of CSS course. So without any further discussion, let's go to our desktop, where we are going to be creating a new folder for the project. Then you can name it anything. You can just call it CSS tutorial, or any name you want to give it. So just like the previous series, our code editor is still going to will still be Visual Studio Code, and you can decide to use your own code editor of choice, but for this series I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to be dragging and dropping this folder that I created into Visual Studio Code. So since we have different sessions in the tutorial, I can just divide into different sessions. So for this first session, we are going to be looking at introduction to HTML. And don't forget, you can see, in case you do not follow the previous tutorial, we are using two major extension. If you click on this extension icon, it's going to bring you where you need to install some add-on that will make our coding experience to be an enjoyable one. So the first one is Prettier. You can go ahead to install it. The first one is Prettier. Yeah, this one I have it installed already. Second one is Live Server, so that we can see the changes that we are making in real time, so without having to reload our web page. So you need to install these two. So those are the two major extensions that we are going to be needing for this course. And in case you are starting your own series with these two CSS series and you do not follow the HTML, let me just repeat the same process I did for the HTML. So all you just need to do after installing Prettier is to press Ctrl Shift P, and if you're on a Mac, you press Command Shift P. So it will bring this pop up, and you just search for settings. You just search for settings, and you see these preferences, open settings UI. You click on it. So once you open it, you just search for formats. Just type format, and you have this option of editor default formatter. So normally before, if you are just installing Prettier, you now have this default formatter selected to be Prettier. Just open the drop down and look for Prettier. You see that you have series of options. Just select Prettier as your default format and come down to this editor format on save, and make sure that this format on save checkbox is clicked or checked. So that is that. So with that, the Prettier will be doing its work for us without the need to disturb ourselves formatting our code. Now, so let's just create an index.html file, which I told you is the default page of any website that you see, or any website that you are building. So I'm going to be bootstrapping the structure, which you just press Shift 1, and you have that, which is eminent. So now let me call this intro to CSS. Let me wrap it with OZ, and I can close this and possibly increase the size if it will allow. Now let me open. So like I said, we install live server. So let's just see it in action too. So let's just call this css tutorial css tutorial. So if I save this, and if you right click, you see if you really install live server, you see the option that allow you to open with live server. So you just click on it. So once you click on it, it will bring up your it will bring up your browser where you can see the changes you are making in real time. So if you change the tutorial, say I just changed CSS tutorial series, I've made some changes now. So you see that if I save now, I don't need to come to my browser to refresh. I can see that the change is in real time. So now CSS. So CSS, like I said, is the short or the abbreviation for cascading style sheets, and is a language that is used to describe the presentation of your HTML document, and it describes the way your HTML document should be displayed. And we have three types of ways by which we can display CSS in HTML documents. We have three major ways or methods by which you can embed CSS into HTML, because you need to link them together before you can use them. And the three types of way by which you can include CSS in our HTML document is that we can use inline, we can use internal, and we can also use external. So these are the three available options available for you anytime you want to link CSS to your HTML document. So we look at the first one, which is the inline. Now take note of the fact that if we have contradicting properties, maybe you want this H2 element to be displayed as red color, and you set an inline style to be red, you set an internal style to be blue, you set an external style to be maybe orange. The red is going to is going to be applied to this H2 element, because the red always inline elements inline CSS always take preference when compared to internal and external CSS. Just we see it in action. Let's just look at it. So let's look at the inline CSS. So you can embed your CSS into HTML using inline CSS, and that is, let's say you have an H4 element and you just say this is an heading. Let's take for example, and you save. You can see that you have this is an heading there. Now let's say you want to style it, you want to make it to be color blue. So all you just need to do using inline CSS is you write the CSS property or the style property or the decoration of the HTML element in the same line with that particular element. So how do you do that? You just do style, and you define the property that you want to define. In this case, I want to make this HTML element to be red, so I just come here and say color, and I make the color to be maybe red or blue or anything. So I make the color to be red. So if I save it now, you can see that my my heading text has now turned to red, because I have styled it using inline CSS. So this is inline CSS, whereby you define it in the same line with the property that you want to style. So now we also have another type of CSS, which is the internal CSS. Internal CSS, whereby you write the CSS properties in the same file with the HTML file, but you don't write it in the same line. Internal. Now let's see that in action. So let's write paragraph this time around, and let's just do some random words of 30 words. And now I have this paragraph. So now I want to style this paragraph. So if I want to style it and I want to use internal CSS, then I need to come to my head inside the heading tag. I told you that in the heading tag you can also define the style. So I can decide to wrap the style in a tag, and in here I can define any CSS property that we apply to this HTML page here. So this is what we call internal CSS. Internal CSS. So whereby I'm embedding the CSS property in the same file with the HTML page that I want to style. So in this case, I am going to be saying, okay, I'm selecting the paragraph. I need to select the element I want to style. So I'm selecting it with the P tag, and I'll wrap it in a decorator. So where I'll now say, okay, the P tag, I want the color to be, let's stay with color this time around. The color of the text maybe to be, okay, let's see the text first. Let's be sure our text is let's see the default color. You can see the default color is black. So let's say I want to make the color to be something maybe orange. So if I save now, you can see that the color has turned to orange with the power of CSS, but this time around internal CSS. Now the last option, which is not just the last option but the most popular one, because sometimes you might need to write your CSS in one place so that you can reuse it or use it several times, because if you define it in this HTML page, is going to be limited or restricted to this particular page. But if you want it to be available, you just define it in a separate file, and any in any point at any point when you need to use it, you just import it into that particular HTML page. So let's see that in action. You just need to come to your folder structure, your folder, and maybe you can create a file called style style.css. I think my HTML file is not in my, yeah, let me move it. Yeah, so I will need to open live server again too, but let's just see it in action without wasting time. So let's say I define another paragraph here. Mm, let me see paragraph. Okay, let me use div this time around. Let's use div so that we not stress ourselves with the way we select CSS for CSS HTML element for now. So let's use some random words of 20 words this time around, and I wrap it using Z. So if I save now and I open a live server, because I've changed the location, so it's not seeing it again. So it's not seeing it. So you see that the default color is black. Now if I want to style this using external CSS, so using external CSS, let me just copy this and label it so that you know that what we are styling this using external CSS. So whereby you create another CSS file externally. So you just need to select it. So don't forget, when you wanted to select paragraph, you selected it using P. So in this case, I want to select div. So I'll just say div, and I'll open a decorator, and I define it as, okay, this text I want the color to be this time around maybe blue, yeah, and I close with a semicolon. So if I save now, okay, if I save now, you see that this text is still black, despite the fact that I've defined my div to be blue. Why? Because I am yet to import it into this HTML file. So if you are using external CSS, you need to define it in a separate file and then come to the HTML file where you want to use it and then import it in there. So how do you do that? Or just let me just label this as external CSS, where we are bringing it from an external file, and this is what we are going to be using. This is the most popular one because we save ourselves the stress of having to write the CSS time several times. So just define it in a separate file and import the file into your HTML files where you will be needing the file. So yeah, to import the external CSS file, all you just need to do is just use the link tag. Just use the link tag, and you have an IntelliSense. Just press tab, where you see that the reference is the style sheet, and the location can be seen in my current file folder directory, and I will go to my CSS style.css. So if I save now, then this style property will be accessible to this HTML file, and that is when this div will be returned to color blue, because this property is now accessible to it because I have imported it using this link attribute. So if I save now, but don't forget that I'm doing that in the head tag. If you do it outside the head tag, it might give you issue. So you should do it inside the head tag. You should do it inside the head tag. You should do it inside the head tag. Every other thing can then be in the body tag. So please take note, don't put it outside. Don't put it outside like this. It might give you issue and it is not right. So you should rather put it in the head tag, and I'm moving it with alt down arrow and up arrow in case you want to just make it jump some tag. And so if I save now, our div is now blue.